What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video from Minecraft Dungeons. So in today's video we got a very special build. Okay, this build here is very near and dear to my heart, and it's probably my favorite build of all builds in Minecraft Dungeons so far, right? Because we have a DLC coming out in July and potentially DLC number 2 coming out in September. So we'll see, but for right now, this is probably my favorite build. I use this to farm, I use this to melt bosses, I use this to just casually play and run around and do things, right? This is my ultimate build for what I am going to be calling the Renegade Monk build. Now, the overall purpose of this build is to allow the maximum amount of DPS at close range against everything. It doesn't matter if you're up against 20, 30, 40 enemies. It doesn't matter if you're going against the boss. It doesn't matter if you're going against some secret boss that you found on some level that nobody else found because you're glitching around the game. It doesn't matter. The whole point of this build is to absolutely melt everything and melt it very fast. So let's get started. For the weapon, I am using the Fighter's Bindings. Now, the Fighter's Bindings are probably, again, one of my favorite weapons in the game and very underestimated. Now, they only have a melee damage of about 499 with a power level of 106, but if you look, it boosts attack speed and it has turbo punches. So if you actually look at the speed of it, it's all the way. Now, because the speed is maxed out, you guys have to keep in mind that whatever enchantments you add, if they have like a percentage of a chance to be activated, because you're dealing so much damage and you're dealing it so fast, those enchantments are going to be activated a lot more often. Now, as far as enchantments go, what I have is Thundering. So of course, Thundering is going to give you a 30% chance to summon a lightning that strikes damages nearby. So you're going to be able to do around 600 damage if you have a power level of 104. Next, we have Swirling. Now, Swirling is a must-have. I repeat, it is a must-have for the Fighter's Bindings. So the last attack in the combo performs a swirling attack, which damages nearby enemies. And if you look at the damage that it outputs, it's almost 1800 damage, which is a lot of damn damage. Okay, now again, couple this with the fact that you're going to be ending this, I think it's like a 3 or 4 hit combo a lot faster, especially with your Death Cap Mushroom. You're going to be doing the swirling attack a lot more often, and it's going to allow you to get a ton of AoE damage. All right, so for the final enchantment, you have Critical Hit. So this gives you a chance to inflict critical hits, dealing triple the amount of damage. Now, it only has a 20% chance to trigger, but again, guys, these weapons are so fast, you'll actually trigger this a lot more often. This is going to be absolutely critical, especially when we are focused on one specific enemy, like a big boss or something. You're going to be doing critical hits, triple the damage, and you're going to be doing it very often. Now, as far as where can you get a pair of these bad boys, what I would recommend is going to the Soggy Cave. In the Soggy Cave, at the end, you have an obsidian chest. This is probably your best chance to farm. All right, so let's talk about the armor. So the armor that we're using is the Renegade armor, hence the name Renegade Monk. Now, I have the Renegade armor at a power level of 107. I got this very early on, and I am absolutely blessed to do so. Now, it already has a health of 5600 health, which is very high in this game. Not to mention, if you look at some of the other abilities for it, you have a 35% damage reduction. So not only do you have high health, but you're basically just a tank. You're a big ass tank at this point in time. On top of that, you also have a 25% melee attack speed. So not only are your weapons maxed out already, the Fighter's Bindings, but now you have an additional 25% melee attack speed. Now, this is going to be very important because I've tried the Fighter's Bindings without the Renegade armor or without that 25% boost, and honestly, they still do a ton of damage, but with that 25% melee attack speed, you definitely notice the difference, and it's very important for this build. Now, lastly, you have a 20% weapon damage boost aura, adding to your already crazy DPS powerhouse that you're outputting right now already. So that's going to be very important as well. Now, like I mentioned before, I got this very early on, so I didn't really have it exactly how I want it to be set up or how I would have it set up. So I'm going to show you guys the enchantments I have, and then I'll tell you guys what ones I recommend. So what I have is Final Shout. So if you get into a tough spot like being surrounded or multiple ranged enemies, this will activate your artifacts and allow you for the most part to be able to stay alive. Next, we have Cooldown. So Cooldown reduces the cooldown for our artifacts so we can use our Death Cap Mushroom more often. And then lastly, we have Gravity Pulse. So this is going to pull in enemies near you so so you can AoE, and then of course kill more mobs at once, considering you have swirling on your fighter's bindings, maybe even thundering, etc. Now if you don't like those, what I would recommend is you swap out either Final Shout or Gravity Pulse with something like Protection or Thorns. So with Protection, you're going to be adding even more damage reduction, making you even more of that powerful metal square block of a tank. And then of course with Thorns, if you take damage, you're going to reflect damage back at 200% for even higher DPS. Now as far as location goes, what I would recommend is going to the Arc Haven. This is probably the best spot to actually farm this, just because it's extremely easy to run through this level, and it's very small because it's one of those secret ones, right? So I would definitely recommend, if you don't have Renegade armor, run through this a couple of times and you should find one in no time. All right, so for range, what we have is the Imploding Crossbow. Now the Imploding Crossbow is going to pull in enemies, so this is going to be perfect for grouping mobs prior to running in and using your fighter's bindings. So let's say you just got done with like 10 to 15 enemies, and then you see some other enemies headed your way. Fire that Imploding Crossbow, pull them together, and then by the time you get there, you can just follow up with those fighters bindings and absolutely destroy them. In addition to this, it also has explodes on impact, so while mobs are grouped up, that arrow that you shot will actually explode, which does even more damage. Now as far as enchantments go, the first one that I have is growing. So since enemies are grouped, this increases the size of the shot, causing it to hit extra enemies on the way to them. In addition to this, I also have accelerate. So accelerate is going to increase the attack speed for each arrow based on each consecutive shot. And then lastly, I have punch. So this is going to boost the arrow pushback. So let's say you group up the mobs, you get them together, it's also going to push them back more if you want to follow up with more consecutive shots, or you're feeling froggy and you want to go in and you want to use your fighter's bindings. Now besides those enchantments, here are the ones that I would probably recommend if you pick up an Imploding Crossbow and you have them available. So the first one's going to be piercing. So this is going to allow the arrow to go through the mob even though it hits, and I think once you upgrade it fully, it happens for every single arrow. So every time that you hit a group of mobs, you're going to be grouping them together, and then that arrow is going to go beyond them and then go into the enemy behind, which is very good. Next we would have Supercharge. So Supercharge is going to give you a plus 40% damage to an already powerful ranged weapon like the Imploding Crossbow, which is absolutely insane. Now in addition to that, you will have Power, and then Power is going to be the third enchantment, which will boost 33% damage of the arrow again. So you're just adding to the amount of DPS that you have, not only at close range, but at far range as well, and then you're grouping those enemies up. So this, like I said in the beginning, this is why this build is so important, because you can use it for so many different scenarios in Minecraft that is absolutely insane. Okay, so for artifacts, I have the Boots of Swiftness. So this is going to be very good if you want to power your way through a level. You're going to be able to go ahead and get in close range a lot faster, and you're just going to melt down enemies as you're traveling through whatever location you're going through at the moment. Next we have Deathcap Mushroom. So this is an absolute must for this build, especially when you're doing a boss or you're fighting something like a redstone golem, or some type of just big boss that has a lot of health. The Deathcap Mushroom is going to increase your attack and movement speed even more than it already is for the fighter's bindings. So you have that plus 25% from the Renegade, you have the additional attack speed from the fighter's bindings, and now you also have the Deathcap Mushroom. So once you pop this baby, it is on. Like, you're going to melt every single boss that you come in contact with, you're going to melt every single mob that you come in contact with, and of course, because we have that reduced duration of the time that it's not available based on, I believe it's one of our enchantments, you're going to be able to pop this a lot more often, so it's going to be very fun. And then lastly, I have Shock Powder. So the reason I use this, honestly, you don't need to, you could swap it out for something else, is because as I'm making my way through a location, I'm using the Boots of Swiftness, and then I'm popping Deathcap. The Shock Powder, as soon as I get into a mob, I'm just going to shock them and I'm just going to blast them away. Maybe you get on one of the locations where there's like 10 to 15 to 20, 30, I don't even know, however many mobs in front of you, shock them, and then you're just going to follow up with the fighter's bindings, kill them very quickly, and you're not going to take any damage whatsoever. So if you don't want to use these artifacts, you could use the Totem of Regeneration. So this is very good for healing yourself. If you get into a situation where you're surrounded, you need to pop that and heal yourself, or maybe you're trying to fight a very tough boss and you want to put that down so that way anytime you take damage, you heal immediately. In addition to that, you could also use the corrupted beacon. Now I would probably only use the corrupted beacon for boss fights just to add that additional damage. And then of course, lastly, you could use the Gong of Weakness. So you could use this to weaken enemies as you fight, allowing the time to kill to be reduced even more. Honestly, I don't feel that this would be very useful, just because the build the way that we have it now, you're going to be melting very fast, so there's really no reason to pop this unless you're running into enchanted enemies or you're running into a gigantic tank of a boss, and then that way, you know, you need to weaken them for some odd reason. All right guys, so that is my Renegade monk build. I hope you found this video helpful, or I hope you found the build very interesting. You want to try it out, I would definitely recommend it. If you're looking for any build in this game, do this one. It's very important. In addition to that, if you liked it, go ahead and hit that like button. Let's go for at least 20 likes on the video. If you watch the video, hit that like button. In addition to that, you know, there is a subscribe button below. You could subscribe and become a part of our community, and then hit that notification bell for more daily videos on gaming and how-tos and guides and tips and tricks, etc. Now with that being said, you guys have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.